Hello everyone, I'm back again to do the game of the day, and this is from the first round of the Asian Nations Cup where Grandmaster Sasikiran Krishnan won his game against Joshua Vickers. So I'm going to go into the game, but before we go, I just want to show you the player card of Grandmaster Sasikiran. He's a former bronze medalist the chess Olympiad. Is also won individual silver in the chess Olympiad that took place in the year 2013, and he has played 100 Olympiad games for India, and that speaks volumes about Grandmaster Sasikiran. So it's my pleasure to cover this game, and I was on the stream today and I really liked this game. There are two special moves that I liked in particular, and you will know what I mean. So this was a knight off. This was e4 c5. Here Grandmaster Sasikiran is black, and after knight f3 d6 we have the knight off. After d4 cd4, knight d4, knight f6, knight c3 a6, and here white chose bishop e2. There are different ways to play against the knight off these days. Some moves like a3 also have come into fashion these days, but here we are going with bishop e2 and black plays e5, knight goes to b3, bishop e7, normal development, bishop e3, bishop e6, and here white plays g4. And then he's intending to go g5 in the future, so Grandmaster Sasikiran plays h6 and prevents it. And there you go, this New Zealand player, he plays pawn to h4. It's being very ambitious, but in a way I appreciate this kind of confidence that he got in the game. And after h4, me and Rakesh were discussing different possibilities, and we were thinking about d5. Now in knight off, if you are able to achieve d5 break as black, you have almost always equalized. So I was considering this, but at the same time I realized that maybe black is not that ready yet to play d5, because black has this knight which is not developed. So let's say if black plays d5 right away, then white has e takes d5, knight takes d5, and after knight takes d5, bishop d5, he has bishop f3. So the exchanging of pieces is favoring white here, because the queen can come to f3, the rook can join the action with rook d1, and then this knight on b8 and the rook on e8, they are still not in the game, plus the king is in the center, considering that d5 is not possible here. So even if you go e4, this can become a long-term target. White can simply drop back his bishop to g2, and then this pawn will need consistent support. So for that reason, d5 was not played. Also, this is a good advice that when you are not ready with the development, when your pieces are not really in the game, it's not a good idea to open the position or do a pawn break in case like this. So prioritizing development makes sense, and so he goes knight c6. So as Rakesh says, this is a new move, new piece. You bring a new piece with every move you make in the opening, a good advice. And after knight c6, white played rook g1. This is an interesting moment, because after rook g1, black can now play d5, and that's what happened in the game. But now there is a difference. I'm going to give you a moment to figure out what could be a possible drawback of rook g1. Okay, so the drawback of rook g1 is that the rook on h1 was defending the pawn on h4. Now it is no longer doing so. Now you might be wondering, how is that relevant? It is relevant because after d5, you see black is threatening to go d4, so e d5 becomes forced, and after knight d5, this bishop on e7 is keeping an eye on the pawn on h4. So you see that the rook now is on g1 and the pawn on h4 is under direct attack. So after e d5, knight d5, bishop d5, now white cannot repeat the same trick, because after e4, when the bishop moves back or g2 or e2, the pawn on h4 is falling. He can even play bishop takes b3 and then maybe follow it up. For example, he can play bishop takes h4 directly. This is also possible. So for that reason, black went d5. So after e d5, knight d5, bishop d5, he did not go bishop f3. White went pawn to g5. Now this could be a long-term target, but I think this was essential for white to do this, and he did this. So commendable effort by white. And after g5, black played at g5, and again a very interesting moment. Consider your possible options and see what you would do as black. And here Grandmaster Sasikiran played bishop to e4, which I like. He's inviting the exchange of queens, because now he's ready. The rook on h8 by default is already in the game, and if the queen captures on d8, you will see what Sasikiran played. But in addition to that, I think if the queen's this trade is not accepted, let's say if white plays c3, then white could go queen c7 and then the rook could come to d8. This is also a possible option. But in the game, white went queen takes d8. Again, there are different ways to recapture this queen. You can capture with the bishop, knight, rook, of course not with the king. But I was intending during the game to, like when I was watching the game, I thought rook into d8 makes sense and it's interesting. But I actually like the move played in the game even more. And now, now that I know the complete game, I know why knight d8 makes more sense. But knight d8 was played, I think, with the idea to target the g5 pawn, which I realized later while watching. So, as I said, the g5 pawn could become a long-term target, and you can see that happen. So, he's got his knight to d8 for a possible knight e6 in the future. So, I like this knight d8, and after triple O, he went knight to e6. Now, white has castled on the queen side and black has kept his king in the center. The point being that there are no immediate ways for white to take advantage of this. But the king on c1 can come under black's radar very soon, as you will see. After knight e6, white played bishop to g4. And I think this is a moment where white could have played differently. Now in this position, this knight on b3 wants to come to c5, but the knight and e6 bishop, the knight on e6 and the bishop on e7, they are taking care of that. So maybe this was probably the right moment to reroute this knight to d2, and let's say if bishop drops back to f5, then you can go knight c4. Again attacking e5 pawn, intending all kinds of knight b6, knight d6. This doesn't really change a lot, but at least the position is balanced. It's not that white is better, but position is balanced. But this was one way white could have done a better move, but he went with bishop to g4. So I like this improvement idea of knight, but after bishop g4, black got this advantage of making new move, new piece idea work. So here he was able to bring his another piece into the game, which is the rook. He got his rook into the game with tempo. You can see the c2 pawn is hanging, and white had to go c3, because if you think of a move like a rook d2, this is only temporary. He can play maybe rook c7 and continue the game. Also, there is a possible minority attack possible here, b5, b4. So there are many various ideas for black. So I prefer black because of this pawn on g5. Going back into the game, after rook c8, he went c3, and then here Sasikiran played rook to h4. Now I think he was already considering all kinds of mating opportunities in this position, and you will see what I mean. I like this move rook h4, and after f3 he played rook into g4. The point being that if white takes rook into g4, black will simply go bishop into f3. So that way he has won a pawn. But after fg4, it's a pure exchange sacrifice and black wins a pawn in return. Now black has this ideas of attacking the king on the queen side, whereas white has not got a real target yet. This knight on g5 cannot be taken so easily, and it's also intending to go to f3 given a chance. So after knight g5 is a pure exchange sacrifice, and I think this is one move that I like. So I told you that I like two special moves. This is one move, that is rook into g4, and after knight g5, here white fumbled. He could have maybe played something like rook d f1. It's a possibility, so that let's say if black plays his knight to f3, then maybe he could play rook to g3 and cause some trouble. But he went bishop to b6. I was not able to understand the intention of this move. Maybe he wants to keep some eye on maybe control on the d8, but black is not really intending to go to d8 with any of his pieces. But this is where black got his chance, and he went knight to f3. The rook is attacked, and here to survive for a few moves, rook g2 was essential, but He played rook f1, allowing a very beautiful checkmating pattern, which is somewhat similar to Boden's mate. We can actually call this a Boden's mate, where two bishops checkmate. And here you can see the king on c1. By now it must be obvious to you. If you analyze all the checks and captures, you will know that the move is rook takes c3 check. Sadly, the king has no square to go to. He cannot go to d2 or b1, and he has to capture the rook. And after this capture, you can see that a particular square is vacant after b comes to c. That is, the b2 pawn comes to c3. You can see that there is bishop to a3 checkmate. A wonderful position, isn't it? To checkmate your opponent in such a fashion is an absolute pleasure. So this is a checkmate. Often grandmasters, or let's say strong players, they are able to execute such tactical patterns because they have practiced solving exercises a lot. So consider training your pattern recognition by solving a lot of positions. So that was my favorite game from the day. He also won all his games today. In addition to that, Grandmaster Sureshekar Ganguly, who is the captain of the team, has also won all the 3 games today. And maybe we will cover another game of his in the future. And I would like to thank you for watching this game of the day. And I'll be back soon with another one shortly. Until then, take care. Bye bye. Do subscribe to our channel.